It all started on a quiet Tuesday afternoon at a major airport, where people from all walks of life were boarding flights, sipping coffee, and going about their day. But in the VIP lounge, something unexpected was about to unfold. A well-dressed black man, calm and composed, took his seat near the front, just like any other frequent flyer. What no one around him realized was that he wasn't just any traveler. He was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. But then something strange happened. A staff member approached him with a tight smile and asked him to give up his seat. Asterisk for someone else. Asterisk that someone else, a white man who had just walked in, seemed confused at first, but then accepted the seat without question. The CEO stood up, surprised but saying nothing, as if he'd experienced this kind of thing before. A few people glanced over, curious. Most ignored it, but what happened next changed everything. What the airline staff didn't know was who they had just asked to move, and more importantly, who was quietly watching. Within minutes, conversations were happening behind closed doors. Phones were ringing, emails were flying. By the time the CEO's flight took off, the very staff who asked him to leave that seat were no longer employed. This isn't just a story about one man losing his seat. It's about respect, assumptions, and the quiet power some people hold without ever raising their voice. But what exactly happened in those 5 minutes? And who made the final call that changed everything? Stay with us, because what comes next might just change the way you see everyday moments and the people in them. Just a few hours earlier, the CEO, Marcus Ellis, had wrapped up a high-stakes meeting with investors in New York. He was flying back home to San Francisco, tired but satisfied. Clad in a sharp navy suit and carrying nothing but a sleek leather bag, he walked into the airport VIP lounge using his Platinum Access Pass. No fuss, no drama. He'd made this trip dozens of times before. Marcus was known for keeping a low profile. Despite running a billion-dollar tech company, he never made headlines, never flaunted his success. He believed respect should be given, not demanded. And on most days, he didn't need to prove who he was. But today was different. As he took his seat in the lounge, he noticed a few glances, some friendly, some not. Then came the staff member. Her voice was polite, but her tone was firm. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to move. That seat is reserved." Marcus looked up, puzzled. "I booked this seat in advance. Is there a mistake?" She didn't flinch. "We're asking you to cooperate. Thank you for understanding." He stood slowly, nodded, and stepped aside. A white man in a crisp blazer strolled over, casually taking the spot Marcus had just vacated. The man didn't say a word, no eye contact, no acknowledgement. What neither of them knew was that another man sitting nearby had noticed everything and was already texting someone. It wasn't loud. No scene was made, but the air shifted. Whispers started. A few passengers started checking their phones as if something big was happening. Back in a private office 2 terminals away, an airline executive stared at a screen, watching the footage play out live. And that's when the real storm began to build. While Marcus waited quietly for his flight, sitting in a far corner of the lounge, the ripple effect of what had just happened was already moving through the airport. One of the airline's regional managers had been on site that day, doing a surprise inspection. He wasn't supposed to be in the lounge, but a last-minute change in plans had placed him just 2 rows away when Marcus was asked to move. The manager, whose name was Daniel, didn't recognize Marcus at first, but he recognized something else. The tone, the way the staff handled it, the look in Marcus's eyes. It wasn't loud or confrontational, but it was uncomfortable. Daniel had seen things like this before, and usually they blew over. But something about this moment didn't sit right. Back at headquarters, a member of the airline's executive team received a flagged notification. The facial recognition system had identified Marcus Ellis entering the lounge, triggering a quiet alert. Marcus was one of their elite clients, not just because of his frequent travel, but because his company had a major corporate travel contract with the airline. That meant serious money. In another part of the lounge, a young woman named Leah had been scrolling on her phone when the incident happened. She didn't know who Marcus was, but she noticed the shift in the room when he was asked to move. She filmed part of it, just in case, and posted a short clip with the caption, "Why was this guy asked to give up his seat? Didn't look right." Within minutes, it started to gain traction. Meanwhile, Marcus sat quietly, checking his watch, sipping water. He still hadn't said a word to anyone. No complaint, no email, no scene. But his silence was beginning to speak louder than anything he could have said. The lounge felt different now. People weren't talking much, but there was an unspoken energy in the air. Lee's video had already been shared hundreds of times, picked up by a few social media pages that specialized in travel stories and corporate controversies. The comments were piling up, some outraged, some confused, all asking the same question. Who was this man? And why was he treated that way? Upstairs, in a sleek glass conference room, the airline's senior operations team was pulled into an emergency meeting. The regional manager, Daniel, had already sent a formal incident report, and now the higher-ups were reviewing security footage. It showed everything: Marcus arriving, showing his credentials, sitting quietly, then being asked to move, the white passenger taking his place, the staff's body language, the lack of explanation. What was the reason given? One executive asked. There wasn't one. They just told him to move. Silence. One team member whispered, "Does anyone know who he is?" They did now. Marcus Ellis, CEO of a tech company that provided cloud security software for half of their systems. A man whose team was scheduled to renegotiate their contract in less than 3 weeks. Back in the lounge, a flight attendant approached Marcus with a quiet apology and offered him a fresh seat in a private section. He smiled politely, thanked her, but declined. He stayed exactly where he was. The message was clear: he didn't want special treatment after the fact. Meanwhile, Leah watched her phone buzz non-stop. Her clip had reached a major influencer known for calling out corporate missteps. The caption now read, "Give VIP status revoked for being the wrong person. This is about more than a seat." Somewhere, deep inside the airline's legal department, red flags were going off, and the clock was ticking. Just when it seemed like the story couldn't get any bigger, a second twist hit, one that no one saw coming. As the airline's legal and PR teams scrambled to control the growing online storm, a call came in from one of their partner corporations. It wasn't about the video. It wasn't about Marcus directly. It was about the man who had taken his seat. The white passenger, now identified as Charles Dempsey, wasn't just another traveler. He was a former board member of a competing airline, one who had been quietly lobbying for a new contract with the same tech company Marcus led. Suddenly, things looked less like a mistake and more like something else entirely. The timing couldn't have been worse. Lee's video had now crossed over into national news coverage, and headlines were beginning to form. Black CEO removed from VIP seat, while ex-competitor gets preferential treatment. Back in the lounge, Marcus was still calm, but his phone finally lit up with a message. Not from the airline, but from his assistant. "Legal team wants to brief you. This may get bigger." He read the text, sighed quietly, and slid the phone back into his pocket. Charles, the man in his former seat, seemed to sense the shift too. He glanced over at Marcus for the first time since the incident, now visibly uncomfortable. It was as if he realized that the seat he'd taken had come with more baggage than he'd bargained for. Meanwhile, airline executives were now debating whether to issue a statement or reach out directly to Marcus. But what they didn't know was that it might already be too late. Because Marcus wasn't planning to speak. Not yet. He was letting the silence and the truth do all the talking. And the world was listening. The tension finally broke just as Marcus's flight was called for boarding. A suited airline executive rushed into the lounge, out of breath and clearly out of his depth. He approached Marcus with a forced smile and an apology rehearsed too many times. "Mr. Ellis, I want to sincerely apologize for what happened earlier. We'd like to offer you a full upgrade, a private escort to the gate, and—" Marcus looked up, calm as ever. "No need. I'm flying coach today." The executive froze, unsure how to respond. Around them, phones were still buzzing, and Leah's video had now hit over 2 million views. A formal press statement had been drafted, but Marcus hadn't said a single word publicly. That, in itself, had become the headline. By the time Marcus boarded, half the staff involved in the lounge incident had already been let go. Internal emails leaked later would reveal that a directive had been sent from the top, *immediate action, no tolerance for bias, intentional or not. Charles Dempsey, the man who took the seat, quietly exited the airport before his flight and never made another public appearance linked to the airline again. But the twist no one expected came 2 days later. Marcus's company announced it was pulling out of its multi-million-dollar contract with the airline. Instead, they'd signed a deal with a smaller competitor, one that had been struggling until now. And when reporters finally got a statement from Marcus, it was just one line. *He preferred to invest in people who see value before they see status. The story went viral again, not for the scandal, but for the way it ended. Quietly, powerfully, and without a single raised voice, Marcus had changed the game. Not just for himself, but for anyone who's ever been underestimated. In the days that followed, the story of Marcus Ellis became more than just a viral video. It became a conversation starter across boardrooms, classrooms, and dinner tables. News outlets didn't just focus on the incident, but on how Marcus handled it. With quiet strength, calm dignity, and complete control. He never argued, never posted a statement out of anger. He simply let his actions speak, and that silence echoed louder than any outrage could. Leah, the woman who filmed the moment, was invited onto a national morning show. She spoke about how she hadn't known who Marcus was but felt something was off. "I just filmed it because I didn't want it to disappear. People deserve to be treated right, no matter who they are or what they look like." The airline, after facing major backlash, announced a full internal review of their VIP lounge policies. They also launched a diversity and sensitivity training initiative, but some critics felt it was too late, a reactive move instead of a meaningful one. Still, the message was clear: things had to change. Marcus, meanwhile, quietly returned to work. He never publicly celebrated what happened. He didn't have to. His decision to back a smaller airline sent a clear signal about who he was and what kind of values his company stood for. In the end, this wasn't just about a seat. It was about how we see one another, about the invisible lines some people still face, and about what happens when someone chooses grace over noise, but still takes a stand. Marcus didn't need recognition. He already had something stronger: influence. And by using it the way he did, he reminded the world that real power doesn't always come from raising your voice. Sometimes it comes from knowing when not to.